have Hennepin County attorney Mary Moriarty currently, who is trying to file charges against a federal ICE agent. Now, obviously, a state cannot prosecute a federal agent unless in very, very rare circumstances, where the circumstances in this case are obviously not met. But, you know, she wants to show that she's doing something, and that something is clearly by prosecuting ICE. Hennepin County is also the same county that prosecuted George Floyd, where, the cops that so-called murdered George Floyd, where obviously those cops were treated very unjustifiably. Their trials were very unjustifiable. And Derek Chauvin, who is continuously serving prison sentences for doing his job. He was a very decorated law enforcement officer before, and now he has to rot in jail because of these people. It's disgusting. These are Democrats that just want political publicity, and this is exactly what this case is. Let's take a look at this interview on MS Now.
At firearm at two motorists in another vehicle as he drove by in an unmarked car along the side of a highway in February. According to the criminal complaint, motorists said that they were in the right lane of the highway when a black SUV came flying up the shoulder with no lights or markings. They had no idea it was even law enforcement. Neither the Department of Homeland Security nor ICE have responded to MS Now's requests for comments on the charges. Hennepin County officials say this is only the first case to be brought against an ICE officer, and more charges against more officers can be expended.
Okay, so first off, I just want to analyze the charges here. I'm not understanding the charges, very simply because you can have a criminal complaint, but that criminal complaint means absolutely nothing in the court of law if there's not sufficient evidence to prove that. And in order to issue a warrant, which Hennepin County attorney did, which you will see later on, you need sufficient evidence and proof for that warrant to be issued, for that judge to grant the warrant. Now, I don't think there was sufficient evidence and proof, because witness testimony, witness account with no actual proof is not enough. And especially in these cases where the witnesses are compelled to lie, then you're going to have witnesses that lie and about these started instances. So no rational judge will issue a warrant. So probably this wasn't a rational judge. It was, your left-leaning judges, classic judges that are just crazy, that shouldn't be sitting on the bench. But let's continue.
Expected. Hennepin County prosecutor Mary Moriarty says her office is investigating 17 incidents involving federal agents. Officials say they are reviewing the January shooting deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. They're also weighing charges against agents involved in a shooting that left a Venezuelan migrant wounded, and they're looking into the arrest of an American citizen who was ordered out of his home in
They're looking into a shooting of a Venezuelan migrant. Like, this is like some American citizen and not migrant. This is an illegal immigrant that they were trying to chase. And the shooting was because he was running and he posed a threat to the ICE agent. This is just so silly. I can't believe this is real. Like, they're just demonizing law enforcement. They think it's funny or something. It's not funny at all to demonize law enforcement. It's not a publicity stunt. It may get you views. It may get you views and likes. But in all reality, and it also may get you votes in Minnesota. In all reality, though, it sets a horrible precedent because it makes the law enforcement in our country demonized. When law enforcement is demonized, our country is going to have lawlessness. When we have lawlessness, then we're not going to have a country. So it's affecting our sovereignty. I mean, it's crazy what these people are doing here.
His underwear in frigid temperatures. State officials say in many of the cases the federal government has not been cooperating, holding back even basic information like the names of agents from local investigators. This case is a rare instance of state prosecutors charging a federal agent for on-duty actions. And Hennepin County is a blueprint for holding power to account. You might remember it was Hennepin County that secured state charges against the officers involved in the murder of George Floyd. And prosecuting federal agents and law enforcement in general is no easy task in this country. There are both practical and legal obstacles. Despite these challenges, state and local prosecutors are charging ahead, aiming to hold ICE agents accountable for the harm that they've caused to communities. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty joins me now. Mary, thank you for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me to be here.
You issued a nationwide warrant for Agent Morgan's arrest on Thursday. It's now Saturday. Do you know how this is going to play out?
I don't. Certainly our hope is that obviously he's aware of the warrant now, that he or his lawyer would reach out to us and turn himself in. So we're waiting to see what he does. But we've not heard anything from him or a lawyer or the federal government for that matter.
And this is where this gets complicated. Your ability to hold federal agents accountable for their actions in your state is affected by the federal government's lack of cooperation with local investigators. Some of that is structural, and some of that is specific to this administration, which has said after every instance of DHS involvement with citizens, they're not planning on cooperating with you.
Absolutely not. And I would say, while there are legal obstacles to prosecuting a federal agent, we would be in much better position if the federal government wasn't actively obstructing our ability to get access to all of the evidence.
It is the federal government's job to protect its own law enforcement agents. Like, this entire idea that somehow the federal government is not sharing information with the Minnesota government in this case, obviously it's not. It's the federal government. The federal government has no obligation to give information about its own agents to the state governments for the state government to prosecute. This federal government can decide whether to prosecute its own agents. I mean, this is law like 101. The states don't have jurisdiction over the federal government.
In an ordinary, well, I'll never say an ordinary, but let's say a Minnesota police officer shoots and kills someone, there is transparency. Our local law enforcement, the BCA, would be on the scene. They'd process the case. They would give us the complete investigation.
Yes,
we would make a decision.
I agree.
We would be transparent about why we made the decision, and the BCA would post their investigation. So that's how things are supposed to happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree. If local law enforcement was doing their jobs, if it was cooperating with ICE agents, if it was referring illegal immigrants to ICE agents, then that's exactly how it would be. The local police departments would be doing their jobs, but they're not. So no, that's not how it's supposed to be. How it's supposed to be is that the local police agencies do their jobs. When the local police agencies do their jobs and cooperate with the federal government, then we could actually have a system that works, where federal agents aren't going to have to be tasked with performing ridiculous operations that they shouldn't even have to perform because the local level police departments wouldn't help them anyways. So I agree with her on this, but she should help ICE agents in this case by giving the local police departments notice to cooperate with them.
And the federal government is actively making it extremely difficult for us to do any of that.
Well, some of these instances are more well-known than others. So let's go back to Alex Preddy, an instance in which the BCA, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, was sort of, for a while, actively prevented from being at the scene to gather evidence.
Not sort of. They were physically blocked. So I was on the phone with the BCA. We had a prosecutor down at the scene, and the BCA came hoping to be able to access the scene and collect evidence the way they would do in every other case. And federal agents physically blocked them from gaining access to the scene. So we and the BCA worked together. This was a Saturday. They drafted a search warrant. We got a judge to sign it. They told the federal government that they had a judicially signed search warrant, and the federal government refused to give them access to the scene. We then went to the probably unprecedented, we filed a federal lawsuit that afternoon and asked for a temporary restraining order, which was granted later that day. The judge ordered the federal government not to alter and to preserve that evidence. So those are extraordinary measures that we had to go.
This is, again, BS, not extraordinary measures. Her lawsuit was not granted. Her lawsuit, all it said was to preserve the evidence, which federal agents already do. That's how crime scenes work. They are required to preserve the evidence. It's in their policies. So once again, she's just lying. I mean, this is just such a... She's a horrible person in general. Like, to be able to go after law enforcement, the people that are saving your life and risking their lives every day so you can live a healthy one is just horrible.
Because the federal government was actively and physically preventing the BCA from doing their investigation.
This incident is one of, I think, 17 incidents that your office is investigating. Included in that are the deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. Can you tell me a bit about where these things are and what, can you characterize them for me?
Sure. So actually, the killing of Renee Good and Alex Preddy and the shooting of Julio Sosa Solis are not part of that 17.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's okay. The 17 that we announced we are looking at are probably videos that people all across the country are familiar with. We told the public about 2 of them, which was Bovino throwing gas in the direction of people who seemed to be peacefully protesting, and another incident that happened at a high school. We have since received information about other cases. We've probably interviewed up like probably more than 50 people at this point. So there are those, what we call TAP cases, Transparency and Accountability Project cases. There are the 3 cases that I mentioned before, and then there's the case we just charged this week.
Let's talk a little about, we know qualified immunity is an issue and has always been an issue, including after the killing of George Floyd. But this administration uses a different word. They say absolute immunity. In fact, within hours of these shootings, we had very senior government officials saying these law enforcement people have absolute immunity. You, of course, were inspired to some degree by the effectiveness of your office prosecuting charges in the George Floyd case. Tell me how that influences how you think about this.
Well, really, we are working with 2 groups in Washington, D.C., the Washington Litigation Group and ICAP. They're working with us pro bono. They are experts in federal law. And they are former DOJ lawyers. Normally, local DAs, state DAs don't have to really think that much about federal law. And so they have been tremendously helpful in walking us through, hey, what does it look like if you charge a federal agent? You know, we're going to face a removal motion. That's removing the case to federal court. But the good news about that is even if it was removed to federal court, we stay on the case. It is still a state court prosecution in federal court. State law applies, and the president cannot pardon anybody who has a state court conviction. The other issue is not absolute immunity. There is no such thing as absolute immunity. If we charge, a federal agent can claim that they have supremacy clause immunity. What that means is the burden is on them to show the court that they were acting pretty much within the scope of their federal employment and that they did nothing more than what was necessary and proper. And so certainly that's a barrier that we normally don't have to deal with, but it's not insurmountable. I think the issue here that's the problem is, unlike most cases prosecutors get where we know what we're going to have and we will not have, we don't know what we don't know here. For instance, in Mr. Preddy's killing, we have no statements from any of the other federal agents. We've heard through the media that the agents were wearing body cameras, but we don't know. We don't have that body cam. We don't know what anybody's going to say. And so in all of these cases, it's a process of thinking about, okay, what could they say? So it's really trying to be strategic about, are we in a position where we could move forward? What are they going to do?
Okay, so the issue with this, and a lot of what she's saying makes sense, and it's actually genuine. I mean, yes, there's a supremacy clause that basically allows the federal government to claim that federal agents, when they are performing their tasks and duties, you have to prove beyond the necessary and proper clause, which is basically saying that the actions were necessary and proper. It's a very hard burden of proof. That's why it's very difficult and almost impossible to prosecute federal agents on the state level, and only the federal government can prosecute its own agents, really. But the issue with what she's saying here is that she's talking as if she's trying to prosecute those federal agents, as if she already made up her mind to prosecute those federal agents. You know, that's not how a DA should work. They should be building a case. If there's no case behind just wanting to prosecute them, there's no point of prosecuting. It's as if she already built that case, even though there's no case built. She just built one in her head because she decided, politically speaking, it's politically popular to prosecute those ICE agents.
To say. And as you know, we filed a lawsuit in Washington, D.C. After the Department of Justice just refused to respond to our request to give us information under the APA. Essentially, we can't subpoena information like statements and personnel records, that kind of thing. We have to go through a process which is outlined by a Supreme Court case called TUI. We did that. We made the case as to why we should get this information. And not only, I mean, the DOJ is supposed to respond and say yes or no, and here's why. They didn't even respond to us. And so as a result,
there's no requirement to respond. What are you talking about? Like, come on. However, I'm 18 already. So an 18-year-old is smarter than this district attorney of Minnesota. Do you understand how concerning this is for the American people, that we have a district attorney that is not educated at all, that doesn't know what she's talking about, that's there for political purposes? Like, this is the downfall of our country. It's how our country is going to fall when we have politicians like this elected rather than actual qualified people.
Of that, we filed a lawsuit in federal court, asking a judge, to order them to release that information. So the Department of Justice's response to our lawsuit is due sometime in May. And so we're kind of seeing how that goes, but we're still continuing to investigate those 3 cases, Sosa Solis and Good and Preddy.
We'll stay on top of this with you. Thank you for explaining this all to us. Mary Moriarty is the attorney for Hennepin County, Minnesota.
Okay, once again, horrible politician. Subscribe down below, guys. Subscribe, like this video if you enjoyed this content, and yeah, leave your thoughts and comments down below.